Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to GX, and this is US Navy's $1.6 trillion plan to destroy China. Okay, that's a strong title when it comes to Cappy. This is from Cappy Army, the new Task and Purpose Guys channel, if you don't know. I like his videos, I like his analysis, I like how he covers things. So, many things as far as I know in US military is changing. I've seen titles from Sandbox and things like how they're making core changes about like how they're trying to bring new F-16s and things like that, how they have like Navy problems and things like that. I'm pretty sure original title of this video was like how US Navy's ship problem or something like that, but he changed it to this. I don't think he changed it. Newer function of YouTube is like you can have multiple titles. YouTube test it out who clicks on what title, and they set that as default probably. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting video because in the end of the day, 10-20 years from now, if there is going to be a major conflict, it's probably going to be between US and China at that scale. So that's the conversation we're going to have for multiple decades in the future. Let's go this one.
Naval superiority is the foundation of America's national security, and to maintain that street cred, the Navy's launched a massive $1.6 trillion program to totally rebuild the fleet called Battle Force Design 2045. In it, they're acquiring hundreds of new warships, thousands of vertical launch cells, and completely canceling other vessels, while simultaneously rebuilding the shipyard entire infrastructure. Can the Navy rebuild in time before China closes the gap? What new ships and tactics are they planning? Why am I deathly afraid of going into the water? Let's find out. 2016 was the pivotal year when the Navy first realized they needed a complete overhaul. They'd accomplished a lot at this point, running 11 nuclear aircraft carriers, fielding the largest, most advanced submarine fleet on Earth, and the most combat-proven destroyer force, all under the care of some 400,000 well-trained sailors, with combat experience and a dislike for boats being touched. But according to the Navy's top officers, beneath all this, the whole system was quietly falling apart. But the US Navy has been busy. They just seized an oil tanker, and we'll use this episode's sponsor, Ground News, to analyze that story. So in it, the bullet points tell me that the US Special Forces, along with Coast Guard boarding crews, flew a Navy helicopter.
Oh yeah, there was also that whole element about like when they surrendered, they still gave a go to like blow it up. The whole scandal. Everybody go to original video page link or at the link to support this channel.
Give Ground News a shot. After years of focusing on 2 land wars, massive budget cuts, and a slow hollowing out of the industrial workforce, the Navy had shrunk to its smallest size since World War I. By 2016, there was only 274 warships in the entire inventory. Gross, I know. China's fleet size has passed the Navy in overall numbers, and they're adding thousands of tons per year, outpacing by a factor of 5. As it stands, America's Navy does have nearly twice the tonnage compared to China at 3.6 million tons. Add on Japan, Australia, and South Korea for a more complete picture of regional allies, but that's not the full story. If you're still talking just simply tonnage and amount of ships, you sound like you're being an unk, because modern naval combat power is quantified also by, more importantly, how many vertical launch cells do you have. It's like my wife always reassures me, it's not the size of the boat, it's the motion in the ocean. Each VLS has offensive and defensive missile capability. By that measure, as of 2025, the United States Navy has combined 9,700 vertical launch cells, including submarines. China, meanwhile, has built up quickly. As of 2025, the People's Liberation Army, their Navy fields about 4,500 vertical launch missile cells. So why the concern? Because that number is on track to reach 8,900 by 2035, while the US number is on track to remain stagnant. And with the home field advantage, we have to take into account that China fields another roughly 1,200 missile launchers on land. So now we understand the very basic, high-level numbers that war planners are looking at the Pentagon. Anyone who can read a simple trend line, like myself after I had some handholding, saw it was not painting a great picture. All of this is to say that 2016 is the first year since the Cold War that Congress created a mandate requiring the Navy to rebuild its fleet to at least 300.
Let's not get it twisted, it's Trump. 2016, Trump came to power. All you have to tell Trump, China is getting bigger than you, and that's it. Same thing happened this time. Oh, F-47, we're going to make that. There was no talk of that. But now suddenly there's F-47. There's another version, forgot, like this. I'm pretty sure it's updated version of F-35. Yeah, there you go.
155 ships. It was also the same time when the Government Accountability Office dropped this report showing the aging facilities at the country's 4 maintenance facilities resulted in a combined 14,000 operational days lost between carriers and submarines. But how would this complicated large-scale project to correct all of this be accomplished? Today, the Navy's shipbuilding capacity has once again shrunk by roughly 50% after the end of the Cold War. Then there was the 1-2 punch of years of budget cuts and outsourcing of industrial production overseas. To right the ship, the government is now using a tactical doctrine that has the acronym TOAMP, which stands for throwing obscene amounts of money at the problem. The government is investing $30 billion a year into shipbuilding. Congress consistently is giving more money to the Navy than they requested for the past 3 years straight. But money alone cannot solve all problems. It only solves most of them. It can't speed up how long it takes to train skilled workers. They need 100,000.
Yeah, I'm a civil contractor and I had similar element. I was finishing a bathroom, right? And the client basically finish it 10 times as that. I'm gonna give you a lot of money. Just hire 10 times the higher force. I'm like, there is so many people I can fit inside a bathroom to finish it. Finishing touches, tiles, painting, putting water closets and everything, right? Like faucets. I can't cram more people than a bathroom can hold. What are you talking about? Shit like that. Like, yeah, just you can't. This isn't mathematically linear thing. There are real logistical problems that you have to overcome. Doesn't matter how much money you throw at it.
1,000 more personnel to construct next generation submarines. And after just a few short years, by 2019, the fleet's rebuild was off track. Navy leaders called projects like the Littoral Combat Ship and the Zumwalt destroyer failures that had completely derailed the rebuild schedule. Ill gross, I know. Admiral Mike Gilday becomes the 32nd Chief of Naval Operations and attempts to refocus the rebuild. He was a good man for the job because Gilday had spent his entire career on the deck of surface warships, working his way up starting on a Perry-class frigate, deploying in the Gulf War, and later rising to the rank of commanding a carrier strike group in the Middle East. He understands naval warfare better than almost anyone. He knew what needed to be built. And early in his tenure, war games delivered a shock to planners like Gilday. Simulated conflicts in the Pacific kept ending with large, concentrated carrier-based naval formations not being able to get within striking distance of China's coastline without taking unacceptable losses.
This is basically Russia versus Ukraine. When Russia takes massive amount of major tanks and roll into Ukraine, all Ukraine needs is javelins and like guerrilla warfare. If US goes to China with its entire naval fleet, and China is not Ukraine, yeah, like that only ends one way. Like this is problem of the modern world. So, precision, laser technology, and basically the modern tech, yeah, it becomes much problematic. Big ships might as well be tanks of the ocean, right? At that point, worse probably because they're much bigger and much slower. So yeah, with precision tech, like, yeah, there you go. You probably need something like air dominance first. There's many layers to it, which you can't just do surprisingly.
The Pentagon produced a classified internal report called the Overmatch Brief. The intelligence report found the carrier fleet would take heavy losses, and Gilday understood the Navy could no longer operate the same way they had in the past. That forced him to rethink the mix of ships that he needed to rebuild. In 2020, Gilday and Navy leadership pushed hard for a new doctrine called Distributed Maritime Operations, DMO. This spread combat power across many smaller nodes instead of a few giant capital ships. It's a doctrine of telling everyone to get out of your personal space. These nodes work as a network spreading long-range missile fires across thousands of miles. DMO made it harder for the adversary to break the fleet's cohesion with a single blow. But this approach had one big requirement. It needs ships, lots of them. Time to put the TOAMP doctrine to the test. Former head of the Navy, Admiral Gilday, had this to say about it.
And this is also one of the big issues US have when they're trying to go against China. China has more ships than US. US has more tonnage. What does that tell you? China has more boats than US does. They have outnumbering number of ships compared to USA. But US have big, heavy ships like that. So they're trying to shift it, I'm gonna guess. That makes sense at certain level.
Quote, I don't mean to be dramatic, but I feel like if the Navy loses its head, I think we may not be able to recover in this century. Based on the trajectory the Chinese are on right now, and again, I don't mean to sound dramatic, I just get the sense that this is not a decade that we can afford to lose ground. Sir, that's not even theater kid levels of dramatic yet. That led to the most ambitious naval blueprint in a generation. Gilday commissioned the Future Naval Force Structure Study, and then based on those findings, crafted what became known as the Battle Force 2045 plan. It outlined a fleet of originally 500 surface ships, which was reduced then to 381, plus 150 unmanned platforms. Now the Navy calls for growing to 78 total submarines, increasing to 75 small surface combatants, nearly 52-tier amphibious fleet of large and small landing ships, upgraded to 96 destroyers, 56 frigates, while keeping the aircraft carriers static at about 11. It shows how the Navy sees their future role of focusing on keeping an underwater advantage. This is what is set to grow the most, the submarine classes. But don't take my word for it, I'm just someone who grew up with an above ground pool, which is white people coded for poor. Would this be enough warships for a global force posture?
I think this is mostly what if China invades Taiwan and we have to defend it thing. Because all I'm saying is if we have to go to all the way to China to attack it, how would that play out? This is where all of this works. But not if US has to defend itself in like Pacific Ocean or like close to their home. That's a different matter. Like they already have things. The aircraft carriers are there. Their insane defenses are there. Right? All the tonnage and all the technology, that would work. But this is mostly if we had to attack China. Because China suddenly attacked Taiwan. What would we do? This is that.
Take a look at this map. It shows how the Navy is organized around the world today. They have 7 active numbered fleets, and each fleet covers a different geographic region. For example, 5th Fleet is responsible for the Middle East. When a ship deploys to a region, it falls under the command of that fleet's responsibility for the region. During the Cold War, there were only 4 fleets. After the Soviet Union collapsed, America's strategy splintered across multiple regions, splitting up the force. So if we take this into account, the US Navy's 7th Fleet alone has roughly 1,000 VLS missile cells. Add in regional allies of South Korea, Japan, Australia, you get a total of closer to 4,000, but this shows the conundrum. However, consolidating the fleet once again could possibly reduce strain. We can no longer be everywhere all the time, knowing who's being naughty and knowing who's being nice. To this point, for the first time ever, the new US government's 2025 National Defense Strategy outlines priority theaters for the Navy. In it, they state that the days of spreading the Navy out across the world thin from Europe to the Middle East to the Pacific are over. According to the document, America's now focusing naval forces on the Western Hemisphere and the Pacific to reduce fleet demands. But even with these efforts to focus and focus and focus, there's still the issue of
you should have been there anyway. Like, I understand why you had to like spread out Middle East and everywhere with Cold War and things, but you should be focusing on mostly Western, Western Hemisphere and like Pacific, Atlantic places like that. Very really concerns USA and like affects China or things like that. Anywhere else, like it doesn't really need it. You have allies. Right? When it comes to Indian Ocean, there is Indian Navy there. And the way how politics works, India is always going to be in the side of Taiwan/West, not really China. So you can really call upon allies, even non-allies, might be neutral, could be allies. This is why India become kind of like military strategic ally past 15 or so years, and that's why they're moving away. Kind of makes sense. Because for years, the global players didn't exist. It was only USA, Soviet Union collapsed. It was kind of like USA and like that's it. But China is rising, India is rising slowly as well. In military terms, yeah, you can kind of spread things like this.
time. The clock is ticking and the race is on. The ships Admiral Gilday needed most weren't close to being ready. The next generation destroyer, DDG-X, is being designed as the backbone of the future fleet. It's 35% larger, equipped with 128 missile cells, but it isn't scheduled to begin construction until way into 2032. Generation Beta will be fighting by the time it's ready. The Navy can't wait that long, so they had smaller ships coming up first. Gilday had already learned from the failures of the Littoral Combat Ship and the Zumwalt program. Both were built under unproven technologies and promised capabilities that didn't materialize. Gilday openly warned his staff against repeating those mistakes, saying, quote, "We've decoupled new technology development from building ships. Instead, we're designing them with programs of record systems and margins to insert future technologies when they're tested and ready." The Navy then tries to apply this philosophy to construct 20 of the new Constellation-class frigates. It was supposed to be delivered from a proven European design, but built to American specifications. Mamma mia, sounds great. However, once again, delays mounted and budgets ballooned, as more and more was added to the design, like Bethesda was secretly running the project. In 2025, the new CNO, Admiral Darrell Caldo.
Bethesda not known for that. What are you talking about? Bethesda is known for delays, not like mounting budget and increasing budget. They don't do that shit. I think your CD Projekt Red would be a great example of this with Cyberpunk. They just delayed, and like budget kind of increased too much, right? Bethesda, BGS is not known for that. They're known for delaying it, like taking a longest time because they don't have that many people. They recently became 300 people type of way. Most of the times they were like 60, 80 people, then like kind of rose to 100. Then main studios like 100, 150 or something. Other two studios like some, they're not giants compared to like other giants who have like thousands of. BGS is not that. Even though they are known as like God tier giant studio, they don't have that manpower.
Comes and takes everything in a slightly new direction. The priority shifts to operational readiness right now. It shifts to being able to fight tonight. Under his watch, the Constellation frigate is shockingly canceled. They state it's the usual suspects because of cost overruns, delays, and poor planning. This sends a shock through the industry.
Today I can announce the first major public action in this reshaping, a strategic shift away from the Constellation-class frigate program. Terminates, for the Navy's convenience, the last 4 ships of the class, which have not begun construction.
His neck is just his face. Holy shit, how much muscle does he... Like that, when you see that, you're like, yeah, he's probably been in military and service for a long time with that level of neck.
The cancellation triggered a major strategic pivot. And what was the fastest way to mass firepower while they searched for a new frigate? The Navy decided to divert resources to building the Marine Corps' medium landing ship. It was based on a proven Dutch design and it promised to solve an urgent problem. The LSM would carry Marines, lots of Marines, armored vehicles, and supplies across the Pacific without relying on ports or things like political access, because the LSM is a 4,000-ton ship, roughly 100 meters long, with a bow ramp capable of just dropping straight onto an unprepared beach, and it just lets you slay on the high seas. It has more than 1,000 square meters of cargo space, room for 2 companies' Marines, and it's lightly armed with 2 30mm cannons. The Navy plans to buy 35 of them, so once completed in a single lift, they could deploy about 9,000 Marines and more than 17,000 tons of equipment, enough to reposition an entire Marine Expeditionary Unit, an entire MEU, across the Pacific. And this aligns with the Marine Corps' new Force Design 2030 to set up temporary missile sites all over the place and be unpredictable. But there is another untapped possibility that could almost double production capacity. One of the biggest changes since World War II era of rebuilding the fleet is that allied countries are far more advanced and prosperous today. The United States has 8 yards for building warships, China's over 20. Alone, the US can build about 10 major ships per year, while China can build more than 25. However, that number could be offset by taking advantage of foreign shipyards, but there are pros and cons to this approach. Instead of operating independently, the US and South Korea and Japan could build ships together. America could leverage the industrial base and workforce of its allies. Naturally, because of the geographic location, countries located already in the Pacific would have a huge advantage. Former Navy Secretary Del Toro said, quote, "We do this in the aircraft industry, where in India, for example, we're building aircraft engines now and reinstituting them here in the United States," end quote. This presents the US Navy with a unique opportunity. Japan's industrial base already plays a huge role in supporting naval readiness. Their 12 shipyards are known for their efficiency and outstanding welding. South Korea has huge industrial capacity at 3.
Yeah, you can basically do what you do with the auto industry. Like he said, you're building engines in India. I've known about that for a while. You can do that shit with everything else. Like, so you can do that in South Korea, Japan, Indonesia, right? The known India, known places where like manufacturing can happen. And just build things and just like, if anything, assemble your home or something. Like build shit there and just assemble. That's much easier. Or you can assemble places where it's known to like, yeah, for shipbuilding, right? So you can do that with allied countries. The problem with military is America and probably other countries are so paranoid. Like you really need to trust your allies at a level like you would do that at that scale. With Trump right now, basically like kiss my ring if you want to talk to me mentality that Trump is going with, would Trump ask like that? I think Trump would rather build more ports in America rather than do this shit. So maybe if Trump goes away, doesn't pursue third term, maybe some other guy would think that. I don't know.
3 major shipyards and some of the most advanced in the world that are currently looking to take on more projects. But there's several problems with this. No allied shipyard is currently authorized to construct US Navy combatant vessels. There is a major legal framework that prohibits shipbuilding outside the United States for the Navy. The Buy America Act requires vessels be built in US shipyards using US labor and mostly US materials. This isn't unusual though, the same is true for most armored vehicles. Even if their designs are foreign, they're built in factories located in the United States. Matthew Paxton, president of Shipbuilders Council of America, said efforts to build in foreign nations was, quote, "These efforts are driving layoffs to the very domestic workforce Navy leadership says it wants to preserve," end quote. Furthermore, the Jones Act requires these ships be built in America. This would have to be reformed or repealed, which would be difficult and require legislative changes, which are the most boring kind of changes. However, on the other hand, that would come with all the downsides of building overseas, which includes giving away tens of thousands of jobs.
The problem with all of this is like the same problem your auto industry and anything else. In America, everything's so costly. Your labor is costly. So eventually people do go outside like India and China to build things. Military doesn't happen because there's a rules already in place. Like you have to build in USA. If they replace that, yeah, I can see that. Like it won't expand, but replace. Probably all of the job will probably go to like India, China, Indonesia, shit like that. And like most of the things domestic would just stop. Because military contractors, how capitalist mentality is, they will think like, what about profit? We can make more profit there, and nothing is stopping us from going there. So there you go. So this is why that would be a problem. And you know what? Another element is like, make your labor cheaper, USA. Okay, all living is costlier. Make cheaper that. This is problem for your Congress, which is never solving because they would never do anything, let alone this scale of thing. But you need to make your way of living cheaper. The goods that you eat, same goods people in India eat. We have everything that you have, from Coca-Cola to God knows what. Why is your way of living costlier? Housing are so costly. Why? Lower the prices of everything. If everything lowers in price, you don't have to justify higher cost for some house. You don't have to justify higher wages because you can lower wages. You can lower everything if you really wanted to, because there is no justification for why it costs so much. If same thing in some place like India and other places is much lower. Maybe not as low as India because there's a certain level of quality that you have that just costs more money, but not at the level that you have 10 times as higher everything compared to India. That's stupid. Twice, maybe 10 times. That's insane. Something like Oreo making here doesn't cost 10 times as high. Pepsi's and Coke. You're talking about like something like, yeah, it's like $4-5 can for Pepsi, and I'm like, that's like 400 rupees. What are you, high? We have similar can at best like 40-50 rupees, less than $1. So shit like that, why does something cost that high? That's what I'm saying. You have to lower every price so even wages lower, so companies don't go somewhere else. But this is like your Congress and your senators' problem, which they are not going to solve. That's the problem here.
jobs and billions in contracts and would present potential security issues. But there have been signals that could soon change. This year, the new US Chief Navy Admiral Officer Caldwell publicly visited Japanese and South Korean shipyards to evaluate their sustainability to possibly build US ships. Behind the scenes, the Pentagon has commissioned studies on modular foreign production, where allies could build just specific sections that are then later assembled at US yards. The House Armed Services Committee recently asked the Pentagon to provide a full assessment of allied shipyard integration options. So far, even getting warships built at private commercial yards in the United States domestically is a hurdle that still needs to be overcome. One of the biggest opportunities that the Navy has today that it didn't have in the 1930s is the ability to construct unmanned warships. I know drones are lifeless and boring, and talking about clankers sucks, so this section will be short.
No.
But it's important because building a destroyer takes up to 7 years, an aircraft carrier takes closer to a decade instead of the 1 year that it took in World War II. But unmanned vessels can be built in a fraction of the time and cost a fraction of the money. Critically, they aren't restricted by the Buy America laws, so they can be built overseas. These are already combat proven in the war in Ukraine, so the Navy is hoping that this could be their ace up their sleeve. The strategy here is once again TOAMP, throw money at it, because the DoD's 2026 budget has allocated $2 billion or more for the program that's been dubbed the Hybrid Fleet. It's built around two flagship unmanned programs that you need to know about. The first is the Large Unmanned Surface Vessel. These are essentially robotic clanker missile magazines that are floating launchers, steel-hulled ships designed to carry between 16 and 32 vertical launch missile cells. They can sail thousands of miles, operate for a month without a crew, and plug directly into the destroyer fire control network. Early estimates put each one at roughly $250 million compared to a $2 billion Arleigh Burke destroyer, and it can be built within just 2 years. A second version can be re-outfitted with surveillance capabilities and ISR instruments and would instead focus on spotting the enemy. Then there's the Orca, which is the answer to the reason why I'm afraid of going in the water, because these things are down there. It's an extra large drone submarine, roughly 85 feet long, with the ability to stay underwater for months. She lays mines and gathers intelligence without risking any crew's lives. Each one.
Do these ships randomly attack fishermen and attack things below and like just suddenly attack enemy ships and run away? Because that would be an apt name, Orca. Yeah, that's, you name something Orca and you know this shit's gonna be next level.
Only costs $120 million, about 1/10 the price of a Virginia-class attack submarine. At a time when every year counts, unmanned vessels may be the only way the Navy can rebuild its fleet in time. But rebuilding the tonnage of the fleet is only half the naval puzzle. The Navy also has to rebuild maintenance capacity at the same time. Take a look at this 63-page long Government Accountability Office audit from 2017 of America's 4 public shipyards. No one is more self-critical of our forces than we are, and it revealed that some dry docks are over 100 years old from 1919. Some facilities still use World War II era cranes. One shop had a wooden roof from 1898. The GAO report was a major warning that something drastic needed to be done to sustain the force. The following year, 2018, the Navy started the $20 billion Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program, SIOP. Admiral William Galanis took over NAVSEA, and he was a great guy for the job because he'd spent his entire career delivering fixed ships on time. And the first thing he pushed for was digital twins, which is a complete high-resolution laser scan 3D virtual model of the shipyards brick by brick. Because these buildings had a ton of pipes that nobody even knew where they were connected to, even a whole mysterious underground railroad track that wasn't on any map. For the first time, the Navy could simulate shipyard workflows and crane movements before even needing to pour any concrete. And the next thing that he did was enforce long-term 50-year planning into a system that up until then had mainly thought about things year to year. Take a look at this map. It shows the location of America's 4 shipyards. Almost all Navy maintenance happens in only these 4 locations, and they needed to rebuild without ever fully shutting down. The centerpiece of the whole project is the 17 dry docks throughout here. Dry docks are basically like a medical operating room for a ship. As long as 3 football fields placed end to end, as wide as a 12-lane highway, and deep enough to submerge a 6-story building. You pump the water out, slip your ship on blocks, and then you fix her. But the problem is they're too small and shallow for the new advanced submarines. They're cracking and they have ancient utility lines. In 2021, major construction starts. Immediately, they realize it's going to cost a lot more. New cost estimates believe that the plan will actually be closer to almost twice as much at $40 billion instead. Shit, that's fine, just toe amp it. Dry dock repairs are coming in at 6 times the original estimates. Whoops, Congress is pissed. They're asking why. Admiral Galanis testifies under oath that this is the only credible solution to prevent an entire fleet collapse. But one large problem keeps emerging over and over again in both shipbuilding and in ship repair: a lack of skilled people. Vice Admiral Galanis says to Congress, quote,
Look, I'm just gonna say, like, the element of just throw money at it, that basically skips the critical layers that you need to think about, and that will present issues. This is a problem with modern America. There's a lot of wastage of money happening because you don't think about, let's creatively think about it, let's try to solve it. No, like, yeah, can we do this? Yeah, it will cost double money. Yeah, fuck it, just give it money. Rather than trying to solve it. No, we don't have double money. Yeah, we have, but let's assume we don't have money because we don't want to start wasting money left and right. Let's try to solve the problem. Nobody's thinking that. They're just throwing money at it, which will one day will be at a point like you have too much money, but even that too much money is not enough. And when war happens, this is gonna hurt.
Our recruitment rates are lower than planned. Some of our mechanics' starting pay is just $14 to $15 an hour, less than Starbucks and Amazon is paying in the area. Pay is then bumped up to $30 or $40 an hour, but retention is difficult to keep the aging workforce from leaving. And the same problem faces the shipbuilding industry. There just aren't enough highly skilled workers. It takes up to 8 years to gain full proficiency in many trades. Can't learn to be a master welder overnight. And the competition they face is steep because working in other industries is a lot more appealing. A job at an oil company can be less dangerous, less physical strain, and less government bureaucracy. Working elsewhere doesn't require a security clearance, and you don't have to be drug tested all the time. Large warship programs are also notorious.
Okay, this is one other problem I can think of. Like, I get it, you have certain things at place. Like, you have to build it in USA. You have to employ local people. But if experts are not available, maybe then you can find more people abroad. Because this should only apply if you have people, use them. But if you don't, you need to get the job done, find people abroad. There should be a clause like that. It shouldn't be just like closed off, like, no, just use like local. But what if you don't have local? Yeah, then you're screwed. This can't be how it works.
Is for stop and start production and cancellations, which hurts job security. The result is a structural shortage that throwing tons of money at isn't going to fix. Shipbuilding is one thing you can't learn from watching a few YouTube videos on. There are federal grants and tax incentives for ship upgrades, but ultimately the Navy estimates that it's going to take 10 years for the new training pipeline to fix this challenge. So in
you know what, just give Mr. Beast a contract and maybe he'll figure that shit out. Today I build $1 trillion worth of, like, oh, there you go. And everybody in the US panics. Where the fuck he got $1 trillion?
2023, to offset, there's a push for robotics. At Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, the automated rudder cuts repair times in half. Clankers to do our fighting and clankers to do our building. So can the US Navy rebuild its fleet in
biggest atrocity? There was no iRobot 2. Was waiting for that for years.
Time? Current estimates state that they will reach 346 ships by 2042. The fleet will first shrink over the next 5 years, though, before beginning to grow. Admiral Gilday had this to say about it, quote, "We don't have the capacity
His expression says it all.
In the industrial base to pump out that number of ships in a short period of time. It's going to take a couple of decades to really deliver, to mature the fleet in a manner where you get that composition that you're looking for. Over time, that gives you the kind of power that you need to fight in the distributed way."
Maybe you don't have that long time. You know what? Understand that things move slowly in military and this global stage. Like, yeah, 20, 30 years is nothing when you're trying to, like, get through certain development. But wars doesn't happen, but when it happens, everything collapses in less than 10 years. Look at the major conflict when it started and it boiled over to something unattainable. was basically like under 10 years. You don't know what happens in 10 years. If shit, like it feels like 2022 was that point where dominoes started to fall. Look at every geopolitics and every geography and geopolitics of it. Like how wars just started to pop up. Even in Africa, shit started to build up after 2022. Ukraine thing, 2022. Israel thing, 2022, and after that. All this shit just popped up. India, Pakistan, fuck it. Even that blew up. Like, first time in like multi-decade, long time, where India, Pakistan literally exchanged like missiles and drones. You don't know what's gonna happen in next 10 years. Like what China said, fuck it, this is our time. It's Taiwan, now or never. Yeah, you don't have that much time, man.
Way. The SOIP maintenance overhaul is about 15% complete as of 2025 and is on track to finish in the late 2030s. On-time ship repair rates have been improving over the last 2 years, but at the end of the day, you never go to war with the military you want, you go to war with the military you have, and you hope that your Navy is the least worst one out there. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Capp.
Well, yeah, that's kind of true though. Like we're talking about China's tonnage and China's number, but like how many of them are really functioning at this level? So maybe US doesn't need this shit. Maybe it's overblown. It's like MiG-25 thing. Oh, we need F-15. No, you really didn't. I don't know. Well, if you like my next video, subscribe and I'll see you next time.